Sarah Sweat, and I work for The Times, and today I'm going to talk to you about how we are harnessing structured content in order to innovate on new product ideas and test out new visions for products. So specifically, we're working with kids, but yeah, I don't want to give too much away. So I'll go ahead and jump to our outline for what we're going to cover today. We're going to do a little bit of background on the project, a little bit of background on myself, some requirements, key features, and then we're going to save time at the end for y'all's questions. Cool. So, kids, how to. So, the New York Times has had an issue for kids for about 4 to 5 years now, but it was print only, and it only came out once a month. But we had this really big community of followers that found us, and we call them our super fans, and they just wanted more. So we're working to figure out how do we make this a more scalable project that is available to more people. And structured content is also something that is also very foreign to the New York Times print sections, because you print an issue and then you move on with your life and no one sees that article again. It's only in that one print flat content. And so it's a totally new paradigm shift. So we've had to advocate across different departments about what is structured content and having to explain that and get them on board for why it's important. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today too. So a little bit of background about myself. The screens are flashing. Okay. So yeah, Sarah Sweat. I went to a coding boot camp after I had graduated from college when I majored in mechanical engineering, and I was like, automotive engines are not my jam. But I was already 4.5 years deep, a little late to come to that realization. But I went to a coding boot camp, then I went to Spoon University, which was a content it was a community of content contributors that were college students. So the main product was actually like these blog posts and content creation from college students based on food. So I was mostly working on CMS, their in-house CMS platform. They got bought by Food Network. I then moved to Food Network. And then also they were struggling with this concept of structured content and how do we create a new direct-to-consumer product and have content that can transcend a bunch of different platforms. We also built that one from scratch, learned a lot of lessons on what is good about doing it from scratch, and then where we can learn from some third-party vendors who have already solved some of these problems. Anyways, so now I'm at the Times working for kids. So now let's jump into that. So when we started the New York Times for Kids project, we were wondering, what are we going to use to power this whole process? And what is going to support the content that is so valuable? Because again, this print section, our editorial team works very hard on it. They pride themselves on the art and the vision and the tone and the voice. And they're very particular about a lot of it. So they have a lot of, they want to have a lot of ownership in the process. So we were looking for something that they could use that was super easy. It was simple, intuitive, low learning curve, something that could get them on board to jump ship from, not jump ship entirely, the print section is still a thing, but they basically needed something that they could see the vision of where we were going with a digital product away from print. We also, though, needed something simple, intuitive, with a low learning curve for our engineering team, and selfishly, myself. That's what we were looking for in that sense. We were also looking for something customizable and something flexible. So our editorial team, again, is working on print stuff. They have a totally different flow than a lot of other avenues for content. We also needed something that, like, as we pivot on new product ideas and new features, that content could carry over to new purposes. COPPA compliance. So this was a big one. COPPA stands for the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. And it basically says that you can't put content for kids on the web without it having verified parental consent. So we needed to make sure our content never showed up on nytimes.com. And so that's why also a lot of people have never heard of the New York Times for Kids section because of all of these rules. And so we needed to create a silo, basically, for our kids' content that it would never end up where we didn't want it to be. I was going to say something else. Maybe it'll come back to me on another slide. Reliable, scalable, and supportive. So these were things from an engineering perspective we were looking for. We were looking for something technically that we could stand up really quickly, that could grow with us, that could pivot with us, and also supportive, meaning the community and the support staff and the team available to help us jump through different hoops along the way. So in comes sanity. And I know we're here for structured content, not about sanity, but I can't stress enough how much their philosophy really resonated with us and really led us down a path of success for this product. And we wouldn't have been able to accomplish a lot of the things we have so far without it. All right, so key features. This is kind of the bulk of the talk and kind of like basically talking you through some of the concepts that we've had to jump through to get where we are. So multiple distribution methods. So this was very important to us from the beginning. So you'll see here on the left, this is our web alpha where we started. So the project was originally, we were like, okay, we're gonna create this web app for kids. They're gonna love it. We get 1 week into our beta, and kids are like, we don't have phones, we have iPads. And we were like, touche, makes sense, checks out. So then we were in like a scramble for a week trying to figure out how do we get this web app to look somewhat decent on a tablet. But because our content was in a structured format, we were pretty much able to repurpose a lot of things. And like, yes, we had to tweak some CSS and yada, yada, yada on the front end, but we were quickly able to pivot to again, we're talking a few days, so like it wasn't, we weren't winning any art awards, but it looked decent enough to get it in front of kids and get their feedback really fast. So the stacking GIF that you see here too, that is a picture of our web app, or our iOS app now. So we've pivoted to our beta to be this iPad app. But when we did that, we had to transition and repurpose all of our content we use in the alpha. Our editorial team had spent a lot of money with contractors, freelancers, artists, illustrators, and we didn't want to lose that content. Then we have our writer check. So that's this like white ugly screen kind of in the middle. When we were in the alpha and early beta, we didn't have an app that we could send out to these freelance contractors and stuff. And so we needed to just show them though, hey, here's what you sent, here's how we put it in the system. Just confirm that like we spelled it your name right, like the pictures are matching with the right words, et cetera, et cetera. But it wasn't necessarily meant to look like what it was in the app. So again, another distribution method. And then we have Instagram. So another way we're proving out our concept is by growing our Instagram account. Follow us at NYT Kids. But that's where a lot of this content is living, and our social media editor often comes into our Sanity instance and pulls a lot of this content to use, which is something that, given that they were based in this print section, they weren't able to do prior. It would take a lot more work to like get digital assets and repurpose this content. One thing I did forget to mention too is like in that transition from the web app to the iOS app, we kind of like, we originally started with Sanity thinking like, okay, we just need to slap something together really fast, and then like, we just need to launch. We had like 10 weeks to build this app. We're like, it'll do. Then as we shifted to beta, we did a full research process, and we compared all the competitors, and we went through everything, and we talked about our must-haves and things like that, and really settled on Sanity was the answer. And like, it was so great to then just transition all of our content to a new data set, start fresh. But we just, because our content was already set up as data and it was already like in a structured format, we could just migrate it over. And like with the collaboration of editorial and design, we were able to like thoughtfully then think about what does this editorial experience look like? What are fields called? Does that make sense? How should this look? And we've really kind of honed in on what the editorial process looks like. Live previews. This was another must-have feature. So because tone and voice and art is so important for our editorial team, they want to know what it looks like in real time. this was not something that existed when I worked at Food Network or Spoon. It was kind of you put it in and you hope that the end user gets the data and it looks like what they thought it was going to look like. With kids in the web alpha, we were able to drop it in the browser. But with an iOS app, you can't just drop an iOS simulator into a web browser. Because, again, our content was data, we were able to listen via webhooks and listen for changes on our draft content. So editors have a specific build of our app that's listening for those changes. And when those changes come through, it propagates in the app. And so editors are able to see, okay, like again, hopefully we're not writing a book in the headline field, but they want to be able to see exactly, should this be 4 words, should this be 5 words, should there be an exclamation point at the end, and they can in real time see what that's going to look like. And again, because content is data at that point, it's just the APIs talking to each other. New data types made easy. So this was a super important feature that we needed to have as we went through the research process. So I don't want to scare anyone with a lot of code on the screen, but I just wanted to show that, so we have this content type, which is a how-to, and it has 4 fields in this particular view of the screen. But the only code required is that code on the right. And so it's basically just a structure of what the data looks like, but that's eliminating the process of having to build an API, having to query for it, having to then update the UI for editorial to input this content in. It's so simple, and so like as we were getting feedback from users during our alpha and during our beta, we were able to say like, well, what if we did a drawing tool, or what if we did tips and tricks and kids submitted suggestions? Like, we were able to spin that up in a matter of minutes on this side, like on the content management side. So that was super important and valuable. Custom publishing workflow. So this was also very important to us. So shout out to the Sanity engineers who created the demo that I stole a lot of parts from. But basically, we've taken their entire editorial workflow and made it into content that lives in our database and is treated just like any other piece of content. So as they're moving through their process, they can go from inputted to check to proof, schedule it, and then it goes live. They can also make assignments to each other. And then one feature we're really proud of that we've recently just launched is batch assignments. So again, like you can go in and you can select multiple pieces of content and then assign it to all of them. And that was like a deeply collaborative process across our team. I don't know if I mentioned, but our team is very small. We like to think we're very mighty too. But we collaborate a lot, and so this took a lot of conversation with our product team, with editorial, and also design, trying to map out like what is this feature gonna look like. Scheduling. So the previous process was all for how-tos, which is like our ever-growing base of content, which is like, you can think of them like articles, things like that. But then there's some pieces of content that only live in your app once. So I heard mentions of like privacy policies and things like that before, stuff like that, where you just have one. And so we just have one homepage, and we have to program that one homepage. So the way we're doing that is we have a field called date, time to be released. Editors select that, but then that's all they have to do. Once that's published and that piece of data is attached to this piece of content, through our access tokens and filtering to get to the app just gets the one most recently in the past date that it needs. And that's all we need to do in order to schedule a homepage. We also have a search page, which has like a collection of suggested tags. And the way that we schedule this is by weekday. And so it's not something like, we want to suggest to kids, hey, why don't you do a weekend project? Or why don't you study for your upcoming quiz? And those are indicative of like, study for your quiz on Monday and Tuesday, but then do weekend projects on the weekend. So the app, again, is looking for what is the day of the week? Give me the one where this one is true. Cool, content referencing. If there's other engineers in the room, which I believe there are, references in place has been great. And another reason, again, how viewing content as data, we're seeing that we can make these relationships very easily and see kind of how these pieces of content relate to each other, and then edit them all in place as well. So our editorial team has been thrilled with this whole process. And also, stop biting your nails is a very popular how-to, believe it or not. That one and pick a lock is a favorite. And make poop cookies, of course. Okay, editorial communication. So another big ask that we've gotten from editorial is we want to leave comments and we want to talk to each other on this platform. And so our Scrappy Doo has been our mascot since the very beginning. He was very present when we were working on our web alpha, and now that we're working on our beta, we're trying to polish it up a little bit. But our Scrappy Doo solution that has made it into this edition is our notes section. So again, we're just attaching a new field on our content type, and this is where we're storing any notes, any comments editors leave for each other all go in this field, and then can be repurposed later on for different use cases. So, I definitely appreciated Simon's screenshot of Wall Street Journal earlier, and I'm glad it was not the New York Times. But hopefully, in contrast to that, I can say that we are trying to do the opposite and make a truly remarkable experience for kids. And I think going from a print section to something as digital and hands-on as this kids product, having our content be able to pivot with us and being able to create new bits of content really quick and really easily and having it be so flexible, it's really empowered us to move really fast and have a lot of success. And so hopefully one day you will see a New York Times for Kids app on your tablet. But yeah, that's all I have, and I think we have time for questions. Carpet.
We don't have those fancy like tape marks, but yeah, just
like
the
an
carpet.
X,
It's a very appropriate carpet actually that no one can see. And fantastic. I look forward to this talk because I have no idea what you do. But yeah, it's so cool to see those screenshots. And what I notice is that there's a bunch of like custom icons in the editing interface.
Yeah.
And it doesn't come with that kind of like out of the box. That is something you did, right?
Yes and no. Like we're using Sanity's icon library, but so we're just importing them. But yeah, we did like that's one of our product teams like and the funnest tickets because I always ask for a quick win for the week, like to where it's like okay, I know I can push a PR in 5 minutes, and usually it's like hey, like can you put the search glass, the magnifying glass on the search document or whatever, and that's always like a fun feature to build. And it makes it fun for our editors too.
Exactly, and that is what I wanted to ask you about because making things fun for editors, I'm not sure if that's kind of like a common thing to do.
Yeah.
But what are like, how are the reactions and conversations you have with the editor team when you can do stuff like this?
Yeah, so we have like a very close relationship with, like we're a very small team, so we're very lucky in that sense that like I have a recurring one-on-one with our editor in charge, and so like it's really nice to be able to like say, hey, what have been your pain points? Like, how hard would it be to do this? Like, can we do that? And then usually we have a demo every 2 weeks, and we kind of like, yeah, we show things we built in the app, but we're also demoing things that we built in Sanity for them, and that's usually what gets editors really excited. Like, they're in the chat being like, oh my gosh, cool, yay, so excited. And oftentimes they're just as excited about that as like a brand new feature in the app. So yeah, it's a collaborative effort, but they're really excited about it too.
Yeah, and I think this is a good point that could be made in the last panel as well. It's kind of like the collaboration. Like, last question, what is a thing you have kind of learned as an engineer from those conversations that you kind of like wish you had known before?
Like any customizations of just like the experience overall?
As broad as it's useful.
I don't know. I think it's like building empathy with your users. I think there's been a lot. Like I think at first when I was first learning to code and things like that, like they were just like build this feature, and I said, yes sir, I'll do that. Whatever you want me to do, I'll figure it out. And now I feel like I have a lot more like agency to be like, hey, like are you sure you want to do that? Like that sounds clunky, or like, what if we did this? And I think one of the last speakers was talking about like how you need to have like engineering in the room, design in the room, product in the room. It truly is a collaborative process to talk through some of those ideas, because sometimes they'll see things I don't see, or I see things they don't see, and we can kind of bounce back and forth and figure out, like, navigate those problems together. And then ultimately leads to a demo 2 weeks later that they're like, oh my gosh, like the feature we just talked about, like it's live and it's there. And so it's way more relaxed too, I think, when you're working on internal tools where there's not such like high stakes as like if we were to mess with the homepage of the NY Times, I'm sure lots of people would be having opinions. But when we're talking with just like 4 or 5 editors about this whole process, I think it gives them the power to have an opinion and influence in the product, and same with the engineering team and design team, et cetera.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for doing so amazing work and for sharing it with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was great.
Yeah.
Thanks.